Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Horrorboy465. Generally, I start out a video by saying welcome to another movie review, or welcome to another let's play, or various other things done on my channel. But today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to sit right here by the fire, and hear some tales that are sure to tingle your spine. So get comfortable, relax, and gaze into the fire, and let's begin a little story. Tonight's story takes place back in the deep dark forest of Darbydale, Ohio. A local legend that I have constantly heard word about, a cemetery found to be the most haunted and most active in the area. Tonight, I'll be telling you the history, legends, and stories about Woollyburger Cemetery. Now with every legend comes its history, the oasis of its tale. So let's rewind the clocks back to 1834, when the cemetery was first built. Apparently, the cemetery was only rarely used, possibly for only local people or certain families. In the mid-1800s, there was a house built near the cemetery that was said to be the home of Willie Butcher and his family. They were very well known and highly respected among the community. But something about their house was off. Even a little creepy, you may say. Plenty of people would constantly tell Willie about this dark, unknown presence looming from this house. But Willie paid no mind to it and carried on with his life and his family. But for an unknown reason one night, something happened. Mr. Willie went out and got a knife and murdered his entire family. After he slaughtered his family, he then committed suicide, and the house was left stained in blood. Some legends vary about the house's demise. Some say it was found burned down. Others say the house was burned down intentionally by locals because of the evil history that had now plagued this house. Many in the little village thought there was some kind of connection between the killings and the cemetery, and therefore a legend was born of the Willie Butcher Cemetery, as it was referred to in the beginning, but eventually as time carried on, it would morph into Woollyburger Cemetery, which is what it's currently referred to as. Many reports have surfaced over time about sightings of Willie Butcher's daughter being spotted in the cemetery alone. But like many other things surrounding this case, there was no evidence to support this. But maybe one day, something will come up. Local reports suggest that cults have been seen wandering around the cemetery late at night. Most of the cases happened from the 1940s to the 1960s. Dead animals and pagan satanic symbols have been found in the cemetery. With no evidence being found of this, it's hard to believe, but maybe, just maybe, there is a possibility that it might have happened. Reports have also said that the KKK used to have rallies at the cemetery, but there is no evidence to back this claim up, or any of the cult claims. But I am curious. I do wonder if this is real. And if it is real, it is very disturbing to think about. Legends of a Bigfoot-like creature have also been talked about, but once again no evidence has ever been found. However, this is the best origin for the name Woollyburger, for supposedly the creature is known as a Woollyburger, but it's only rumors. The real reason for the name of the cemetery is unknown, but it is curious to think about maybe the possibility that there might be some kind of a unknown creature out there in the woods watching at night for victims. But is it true? I guess time will tell. Initially, when I heard all the stories, I didn't know what to believe. The fact that we didn't have much concrete evidence to support this place made the investigation harder. For those of you that don't know, I investigate haunted areas in my spare time. I've explored many areas and cemeteries, and usually find nothing. But my experience at Woollyburger Cemetery was different. I went there twice, and the first time we went, there wasn't much activity. Just some noises in the woods and other little unsettling things that could have been easily and logically explained. We returned to the cemetery about 2 months later. It was a little bit more into the fall, possibly early October, and it was late at night. As we walked up the path that leads into the cemetery, it seemed darker than before. Something felt different, at least to me anyways. As we got to the cemetery, it was a clear, bright night sky, with the stars out and the bugs loud. We walked around a little bit and looked at some of the graves. There was 3 of us. I walked to the right of the cemetery with an EVP recorder and a flashlight, and the other 2 people I had with me were to the left side of the cemetery. They had their own EVPs and flashlights too. I looked at the graves, which had worn names and dates on them. Some were illegible, and some stones were even destroyed to pieces, which was very saddening to see. We've seen some other people entering the cemetery too. They were there to see if any of the stories were true, just like us. We grouped up and started to walk around the cemetery. We walked uphill to the top of the cemetery, and something mysterious happened. It was quiet. Really quiet. No bugs, no sounds, nothing but the howling wind and the cool night breeze. I was the first one to notice it and point it out, and at that point, everyone started to notice it. I started getting a little creeped out. Then, all of a sudden, the forest and beautiful night sky was covered with a thick fog that had suddenly surrounded us. We were only able to see a few inches ahead of us. We were scared, but nothing supernatural happened yet, so we weren't super frightened. Until we heard a distant knocking. It sounded like knocking on a tree. The knocking began to move around, and we heard a slight moving in the forest, but due to the fog we couldn't see that very far. A couple of us had gotten scared, but we were able to calm each other down enough to continue to the very back of the hill, which passed into some trees. As I was catching up to the group, I noticed something on the ground next to a child's grave. It was a little stuffed animal toy, laying beside the grave. It looked old and worn, and something about it seemed tragic. I remember feeling sadness come over me. After investigating for a minute, I continued on back to the hill with the others. We walked around telling spooky stories and talking amongst ourselves, when we noticed a jagged path that leads back into the woods. One of the people from our group said they knew the path, so we followed them into the forest. I let everyone else go first since I'm tall. It would take longer for me to get to the path. As we went through, vines and thorns and branches were hitting and brushing against me as we walked through the forest and finally came across a path that went uphill and downhill. We chose to go downhill. We walked for about 5 minutes, still not hearing bugs or any kind of night sound except for the eerie wind that kept on sweeping through the forest, until we heard some distant coyotes howling. It sounded like there was about 4 or 5 of them, but since we were a big group, we weren't that scared. We made it to the bottom of the hill, where the howling stopped. It was an open field with the fog appearing to have went down to our knees and waists, just like something out of a horror film. There were thick bushes that seemed to make up a path, possibly a maze, if you will. We went through the rest of the path when we got to the center of the area, which led into another set of woods. But the person in front stopped and looked on and said, "We shouldn't go in there." "Why not?" somebody else asked. I walked up to the front of the group and looked ahead to the path. It was engulfed in darkness and fog. All of a sudden, I felt this gut feeling to not take one more step. We all looked around talking about this bad feeling of uncertainty we had each had, and decided to go back and get out of here. All of a sudden, the coyotes started howling, this time sounding much closer, and they seemed to have followed us to the field. We looked around, but we couldn't see anything. It was dark and misty. We speed walked through the bushes and uphill until we came back out into the cemetery. We had all gotten back into our cars and left. Ever since that night, I'm not too sure what that was. The dark energy, the feelings of uncertainty, the dark paths, the sudden mist, and just altogether this presence there that I just couldn't get over. And by the way, this story is 100% true. This is an actual account from me, Nate. I'm telling you guys my actual story that I'd felt when I went to a Woollyburger cemetery to investigate. Unfortunately, most of the things that we had used in the investigation are now lost. The footage and audio I cannot find. But maybe one day we can go back and we'll see what happens. What I just shared with you is my experience with Woollyburger Cemetery. It was a true story. So even though we didn't see or hear anything spiritual, I can say that I've never been to a place with such a dark, looming presence. And the fog appearing out of nowhere, the dead silence, the howling, the creepy dolls. overcoming feelings of uncertainty. It definitely was a haunting experience, and maybe one day I'll return. But until then, we'll have to see what happens with Woollyburger Cemetery. Every year there's new stories that are being told from new people, new experiences. Maybe one day if you can go to Darbydale, Ohio, maybe you can visit the legendary Woollyburger Cemetery. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and maybe got a little creeped out. If you guys want to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments. This is my first time doing this kind of styled video, and if you guys want to see more, I want to hear your feedback. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. The Explorer Reporter is out. Bye guys.